So good evening, and thanks for joining us today. We're really grateful to have been able to bring together such an awesome group of people to have this conversation, and I'm really excited to share some of their wisdom with you. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping things. Please feel free to put questions in the chat or the Q&A at the bottom of your screens as you think of them. We'll do our best to answer those questions as we go. But we'll certainly save time towards the end as well for more of an official kind of Q&A discussion section. So if your question isn't getting answered as soon as you put it in, don't worry, we'll get to it. We're also going to send a recording of this today to everybody who registered. So if you do, for some reason, have to end up leaving before, don't worry, don't panic, you can definitely rewatch it. So what I wanted to start with is some introductions. So I'll start with myself. My name's Siobhan. I'm the president of the Advertising Production Club of New York. We're an organization that seeks to support students who are looking to enter the world of media and advertising production, as well as the professionals who are already in the industry. So we do this in a variety of ways. We provide education, lots of community environment, and we fundraise for a scholarship fund as well. Our organization has always been very heavily involved in offline events. But just like everybody in the last 6-8 weeks or so, we've had to move to a much more online model for providing content to our community and for kind of virtual ways to stay in touch, really. We intend to do loads more of these webinars, so please keep an eye out for those going forward. Yeah, hopefully you'll be able to join us. So one of the goals we have as an organization is to make it as easy and as accessible as possible for students to benefit from the expertise that already exists within the industry that you guys are looking to go into. So as industry experts, we really want to offer our support as early as we can in that student's journey. So really as early as you guys are up for receiving it. We really believe that it can benefit that kind of transition from more of a studying academic kind of environment into an industry environment. And what we're trying to do is make that as an enjoyable and positive process as we can for you. So with all of that in mind, we felt that today's topic was a really important one to have. We know there are many students whose plans might be a lot more unknown than they had expected as they finished their academic year this year. And how to manage that can feel really scary at times. So as somebody who has benefited from some incredible mentors over my career, I really believe that not being afraid to ask for help, being really open to options, no matter what they may be, whether they were things that you have ever considered or things that you were like, no way, there's no way I would have ever even entertained that type of thing or thought about it. And also just, you know, being able to make that next step. You don't need to be massively focused on all the outcomes right now. Like what you want to do is feel like you're back in control again of the situation. And I think sometimes just doing something to move forward can really give that feeling back to you. So that's kind of what we're trying to provide a little bit of you for today. So before we get into some of that and, you know, a bit more detail and all that good stuff, what I wanted to do, obviously, to start a chat is ask each of our panelists to tell us a little bit about themselves and the company that they work at. So Josie, would you like to start?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Josie Gonzalez. I currently work for NBC Universal out of the Miami office. I support the Telemundo Enterprises business and also NBCU International. And as for the internship program of Telemundo, I have been running that since mid last year when I joined the company. So I'm very happy to be here, and I hope that you guys can find some insightful info from what we're saying. But prior to NBC, I started my career out in staffing, and then I moved over to advertising for about 4.5 years.
Cool, thank you. Jimmy?
Hi guys, my name is Jimmy Levin. I'm currently a career coach at Stony Brook University, one of the top research universities in the world. And I hope tonight we're able to sort of provide a little calm, sort of diffuse, reduce, maybe help eliminate some of that anxiety you may be feeling Quick backstory on me. I was a creative service provider for about 27 years. I had a photo studio in New York, James Levin Studios. I specialized in kids and lifestyle, worked for big brands, Mattel, Fisher-Price, Scholastic, Kimberly-Clark, Procter & Gamble. I had a fabulous run. I worked for editorial magazines, Condé Nast, Hearst, some of the largest global agencies in the world as well. In 2007, I was diagnosed with a retinal disease, and it ended my career. So I know, and I lived, and I experienced career disruption. I can talk from that experience. I had to reinvent and reboot myself. And through networking and just utilizing resources that were available, which we'll talk about tonight, I hope, I discovered recruiting, talent acquisition. And then organically, my career just shifted into the coaching. I got certified along the way. So I'm a full-time career coach. I manage 2 communities at the university. One is the College of Business. So that would be students in finance, economics, accounting, marketing, strategy, operations, and fulfillment. And then I also manage the arts, communications, and humanities community at the college. I like to tell students that I'm their GPS. I'm your Waze, I'm your Google Map, guys. You can program me. I will help you navigate the process, but you must drive. If I had a job in my back pocket, I would give it to everybody. I do not. That is on you. I will assist you, but you got to drive. That's my story.
Thanks, Jimmy. Jared?
Well, how do I follow Jimmy? That's going to be a difficult
I
one.
know.
Amazing.
Yourself.
So my name is Jared Kostin. I'm the Global Chief Talent Officer for Creative Drive. We are a media production content development company. My background actually started off very similar to Josie. I started off as an agency recruiter, blah, 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 years ago, and worked my way into the technology sector. Worked many years in a generalist human resources role in the technology world, and then moved on into the advertising and media realm, working for one of the large advertising holding companies before coming to Creative Drive. One of the nice things about working in the content production space is people are creative. There's no product being made, there's a creative eye being used. And I think that relates very similar to the topic of tonight, in that this is a difficult time and we need to use a certain level of creativity in how we move forward and how we craft our future. So similar to what Josie and Jimmy have said, my goal for tonight is to provide tools and help to build a roadmap. And if really one person takes one little snippet away that's going to help them to move forward, then I think our time together was very well spent.
Thank you, guys. Jimmy approves. Okay, awesome. So let's get into some questions. So it's been a pretty crazy 6 weeks, and I don't think there's anybody who hasn't been affected in some way by COVID. So could each of you tell us what's been happening in your own companies in relation to your role? What's kind of drastically changed in the way that you were doing your job, in terms of how you were doing, what you were doing before and how you're doing it now? And just maybe if you could touch on like that from some of the struggles that you've seen, but also like some of the positivities that have come out of that hopefully already as well. Anyone can start.
I'll start if it's easier. It's been an interesting time for me, and I'm blessed to have an amazing team that works both in the United States and around the world that helps to manage some of the unprecedented time that we're facing. The reality is COVID-19 impacted my business going all the way back to January because we have two offices in China, Shenzhen, China being one of our larger photo production facilities. So we date back to the very beginning of this before it even touched the United States. The reality is the way it changed my operation and my team's operation is that while we've always been very safety focused, now we're very much safety focused. We're very much employee experience focused in making sure that our people have what they need, whether it's a shoulder to lean on, whether it's advice and guidance. whether it's benefits and medical assistance for themselves or for sick family members. You know, staffing is an interesting scenario. I think one of the reasons we're talking tonight is because for us, staffing slowed down and became less of a prevalent on my desk every day. I had been looking, I would say probably a third of my day at talent acquisition metrics, financials, so on and so forth. And that very much flipped to enterprise level operational type statistics, tracking, plans, and always being ahead of the game. So when we were managing the epidemic in China, we were already planning for shutdown in Brazil, the United States, the UK, Costa Rica. As it started to flow country to country, we had to very quickly adjust the business, but at the same time, start planning for reopening. So really the way that we have shifted, we've become, while always metric driven, the metrics have changed, right? And what we're looking at on a day-to-day basis has changed. Other than that, you know, the way we manage is very much in an experiential way. We don't have a human resources department. We have a talent experience department. And we've always been about connection and being authentic and being open and kind of in that creative way being tribal. So now we're just experiencing it in a different way, whether it's through Zoom or virtual stretching sessions across the United States to, you know, let everybody stretch their shoulders because they're working at kitchen tables, whatever it may be. So it's really an interesting time.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it sounds like, you know, really also what you're saying is that, you know, you had to maybe adapt those techniques or change the way you're going about it, but actually the majority of that plan, that core plan is, you know, is still moving ahead. It's just the way you go about it is being slightly different, or the team members that you need to bring in to be able to do that, or the techniques or the tools in order to do it. But that actually what you know is still what you know,
Right.
and you can come back to that no matter what. Like you know, the rules haven't totally changed.
Yes,
Cool.
absolutely.
Okay.
As a business, we're still in Q2.
Great. Jimmy?
Okay, so for me, my primary audience is mostly students. I do have a consultant business where I work with mid and senior level executives, but the core of my target audience are students. And there's a lot of anxiety, especially for seniors who are graduating in 2 weeks. What's the market going to be? So how has it changed me? I think Jared brought up the word connection. It's a key player in this. This is the most important time to be connected because you're going to rely on your network, guys. So I follow industry trends, who's hiring, where are the hot spots, because there are people still posting jobs, they're sourcing, they're vetting, and they're hiring. I mean, I've got students who were just got commitments for internships and jobs. They just pushed the start date back a little bit, waiting for the marketplace to sort of settle and open up. And hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later. But we're in a virtual environment now, and tech redefines everything every day. It's redefining what we're doing, how you're going to look for jobs. Most of you, the disadvantage of this setup is I can't see your faces, but I'm going to assume most of you are students. So in which case you are the digital natives, guys. You know how to access information. When I was your age, it was information. Today it's data. Go get the data. Research, Google search, go to any of the job boards, LinkedIn, go to your alumni association. You have so many resources to play with. And that's where it comes down to now, that the rules of engagement haven't entirely changed, because what you know is what you know, as Siobhan said, but the rules of engagement are different right now. This is not a matter of doing it differently. You got to think it differently. So for me, I've learned how to deal with the technology so I can talk to students and present to classes and do workshops and webinars. I'm not unfamiliar with tech, but I had to master all this. So how to share the screen and how to go back and forth with that kind of stuff. So tech changed some of how I do what I do, but you guys have grown up in that world. You know how to access the information. Change is part of life. You're going to have change no matter what. Good change, bad change, guys. It's disruptive. Have a baby, buy a car, buy a house. It's good change. It's disruptive. It's disruptive. Get fired.
Go into that.
Get fired. Pandemic. It's disruptive. But you got to figure out how to do it differently and survive this. And there's a lot of ways to do it. So that's really how it's changed my engagement in adapting. You're going to have to, I'm adapting to talk to you. You're going to have to adapt to find an internship or a job.
Cool. And Josie, I mean, I'm interested a little bit from you as well. I know you guys, and you're very, very focused on the actual internship program within NBC Universal. Like, if you could also just speak a little bit to kind of the process that you guys have gone through in terms of like rethinking that and what your decision, making pattern was, and what you've come to as well within NBC.
Yeah, so we have decided to, make the program remote, just until further notice. And so the company is going through a lot, trying to figure out how to do that properly. And I think that we're all doing a really great job, and we're getting very positive feedback. There's still so much to learn, even if you're not in the building. Hiring managers now have more time, than ever. In some departments to just explain a little bit more and take the extra mile. So as far as an internship opportunity goes, when some people hear remote, they kind of flinch, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think this is a great opportunity to just take advantage of all of that extra time that you have, and the extra mile that people are going to give you. Yeah. But as far as other parts of the business, besides the internship program, as you know, NBC Universal is also managing the parks. And so Universal Studios being closed obviously affects a lot. And, we're doing what we can to make sure that all the communications are going out properly, and that, everyone is happy. But, Disney has also closed too. So the whole theme parks closing are a huge impact. And I definitely think that we will make it through this. But other than the parks, we also have Peacock, which is the streaming app that NBCU just launched. So that was, ready to go out right in the middle of all of this happening. And they still seen such a great turnout. So, I'm really glad that they actually decided to launch it when it did, because it happened to actually work out.
Yeah.
And other than Peacock, they also have launched Quibi, which is, a really fun mobile app of short snippets of shows. So I think it was all really good timing, and we're just really fortunate to be such a large company with such great resources and people. But other than that, the studios are affected too.
Yeah, no, it's just so, I mean, I think I've heard it from so many places over the last few weeks. It's like the adaptability of people and businesses is just awesome, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of like a superpower in a way that we've all got. And it's an amazing opportunity as well. But like you say, that there's so many areas that would never have been explored before. And there's so many things that maybe we all thought it was the end of the world, March 16th or whatever. And hey, we're in a really different place right now. So, it's pretty cool to just take that moment, right? To just realize that wave that you go through of the panic to the acceptance and the calm and the what do I do? Like it's there, it's real, like, and it's being felt by everybody at all levels, so you're really not alone in that, wherever you are. Cool. Okay, awesome. So let's get on to a couple of slightly a little bit more kind of, I guess, kind of tactical things. So couple of things. So I guess a very large majority of people on today's call probably were expecting to either start an internship this summer or begin their job search because of the kind of lockdown situation. Maybe they are now going to be struggling to even make that first step that's required to kind of pursue that plan. And maybe they're also really nervous that the way they need to go about that plan is now totally different. Can you share some thoughts on how they might make that first move and what it might be? And if you actually even think it is different pre-lockdown, or actually has that changed? Like, what do you do as that first step right now? Yeah, Jimmy, go for it.
So it is definitely different. There's less opportunity out there. I mean, from bad comes good, and Josie, I think, hit the point well with there is opportunity out there. The question how to find it is a little more challenging. You've got almost 4 million students graduating this year alone in the US. They're all looking to walk in the same shoes. So it's competitive under normal circumstances, especially creative services. So it's a little bit more so now. So how do you start coming out of the gate? You really do have to do your industry research. You're going to shoot for your A-list job, guys. You should always shoot for the high mark, but you may just see that that doesn't exist for whatever reason. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Scale it down. Go for the B, C, D. You've got to figure out a way. There's going to be a gap because of this. And how can you fill that time in on your resume? And there's not a hiring manager, and I know my colleagues on this screen will support this, but there's not a hiring manager out there that would not respect and admire that you were able to fill that gap time with something meaningful. Does not need to be industry specific. There's always a net takeaway. As Jared said in his introduction, if you get one thing from your experience, you've done well. If you get two, you've done really well. Process, protocol, procedure. Don't focus on just the best job opportunity. At this point in time, you really need to have a little bit more of a wide angle lens on. But research, I mentioned that before, research is really the secret sauce here. If you don't have the data in your hand, where do you look? So that's really how I think you start. It's a strategic plan. You're the brand product service, and no brand product service launches without a strategic plan. So you've got to have that plan in place. What are your career objectives? Ask yourself those meaningful questions and find the answers. And rely on your resources. If you're still currently a student, use your career center.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Josie, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, so definitely very, very challenging times for trying to find that right opportunity, especially if you're, coming straight out of college. But a lot of roles, even though they're being closed or being canceled, that doesn't mean that recruiters aren't still willing to speak with you or pipeline your information for the future. As business is being assessed, and when we resume to normal business cadence, we're going to find that a lot of roles that may have existed before may not exist anymore, or maybe we'll need more of something that we didn't know before. So there are so many changes that are coming about that if you just take the time now to acquire some new skills or even some certifications that may be applicable to different facets of your industry or expertise, that is going to be better for you when you're having these conversations, whether they're just with, passive recruiters or employees that are, at their company now. You never know where that conversation is going to take you. And, if you're shy or you're too nervous, a message is just a message. The worst that can happen is that you don't get a reply, but you know what? Try again. We are made to adapt. It's a part of the human condition, and it's one of my most favorite characteristics of being human. We are made to adapt and make things work in our favor. So I definitely hope that students or anyone are taking this as an opportunity to be direct, message those people, have those conversations, and don't be shy. Ask all the questions. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, no, I think it reminds me, actually, I've been doing some sales training specifically with some companies at the moment, and I was kind of reminded a little bit of some of the kind of cold calling kind of world recently. And there's some amazing stats around that kind of thing. But, and it's not about, like you say, like it's about having something good to say and making sure that that's a worthwhile conversation. But I think that there was a stat around something like 90% of people, even if they have an intention to buy, don't answer until the 5th time or something. And this was like an industry statistic. Like, it's like they're almost playing with you, which I'm not necessarily suggesting is the case, but to your point, Josie, and I think the other thing that someone said the other day as well was like, don't take this personally, right? Like, everybody is dealing with a billion things right now. Like, you know, I personally don't have any children, but every time I speak to anyone with them, they're, you know, climbing on the wall up the, you know, in the Zooms, and they're here and they're there. And I'm like, how are you doing this? You know, like if you catch someone at that moment, you could catch them 3 times that week in that moment. That doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong or you haven't tried enough. Like, just keep going, you know, like maybe have something a little bit different to say to them, or maybe do it at a slightly different time of day or from a different channel, you know, like if you've tried email a couple of times, maybe, you know, try and just link in, connect with them or something. But, you know, don't necessarily just take that as a personal thing that like, they don't want to speak to me, it's done, you know, like that is, that's almost definitely not the case. So Jared, if you could just follow that on as well. And I just wanted to kind of say as well, like, and you know, you can talk to this bit if anyone else has to add to this, like, are there any like real specific tools that you've come across at the moment as well that have changed within that process? So less about maybe, you know, the process itself may have changed and the steps you need to take, but actually additional tools, whether that be additional networking tools or additional content tools or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of how you use the tools, not so much the tools that exist or that are put in front of you. And, you know, there's an interesting way to back up and start looking at this, whether you're a student who is looking for an internship or somebody who's graduating and looking for your first job. You know, Josie's commentary and Jimmy's commentary are 100% correct. I agree wholeheartedly with them. But the reality is, you know, there's an expression, life is not about waiting out the storm, it's learning how to dance in the rain. And we have to learn how to dance in the rain right now. Students who are coming out of college or who are looking for internships are in the exact same scenario as millions of Americans right now. There's people that have been furloughed, there's people that have been laid off. So they're not in it alone. And when you first start and set your mindset in the proper way, that gives you a good foundation for how to move forward. If you get out of the woe is me mentality and say, wow, you know what? I acknowledge that this situation stinks. It's not someplace that I want to be or want my friends to be, but we're here. And I can't control that, right? I can only control what's in my control, and that's how I react to it. Once you set that mentality, that gives you the grip on the tool. Then you can actually turn the tool or type the tool or do whatever you need to do with it. So it's really the mentality that athletes go through of adapting, improvising, and overcoming, right? We have to improvise now. We are in an improvisation state. And I think more than ever now, the digital tools that we have, right? There's no networking events that people are going to. They're using the digital tools. So how do you use them properly? Like you were saying, Siobhan, it's an interesting time. You don't want to annoy people, but you also want to be bold. So if you're pecking at somebody, you know, hey, just checking in, hey, just checking in, hey, just checking in, that's not adding anything. And well, somebody may say, wow, this person's really annoying. Nobody's going to think you're desperate. Everybody's desperate right now. Let's be honest. Like, you can't sugarcoat that. We have millions of desperate people, and that's okay. You know, let's talk about the things people don't want to talk about, right? It's okay to be there right now. But if you contact somebody, do some research on them and their company, reach out to them. They say, hey, you know what? Nothing going on. Or they ghost you and they just leave you alone. It's perfectly okay to follow up. I wouldn't follow up the next day. But if you follow up with them next week and say, you know what? I saw the article that you wrote on LinkedIn. It was great. Here's my point of view on that. And not a long narrative, but a short one. I think that's okay. But the reality is right now, at least from my perspective and from my team's perspective, we want to see that grit. We want to see people that are creating something out of nothing. We want to see people that are using those tools in a new and better way. Yeah. And you know, it's important. It's a very difficult concept to grasp when you're feeling some kind of way, right? If you're not feeling confident and you're feeling that the world is against you, it really shines through. You see that, you see the desperation. But if you stop and just level set yourself and say, you know what, this is where I am. I can't do anything to change the fact that I'm here. Now, how do I move on? And you accept that, the use of the tools becomes easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up, like, sorry, go on, Jimmy. Yeah. I
just want to echo something that that Jared said. He mentioned the word attitude. You know, our whole lives, there are things we can't control. We just can't. We're little, our parents tell us what to do, teachers, coaches, older siblings. You got to do it. You get a boss, they tell you what to do, right or wrong, like it or not, you do it. But something you can always control, guys, is your attitude and your effort. And attitude, especially now, is the root foundation for how your day is going to unfold. You want to wake up and say it's a crappy day. Well, guess what? It's a crappy day. So if your mindset is right, this whole process, whether COVID exists or not, when you're looking for a job, you have to communicate to do that somehow, some way. And your messaging is all on your behalf. The narrative you put out there, if you use that foundation with a good attitude, it comes off in a much better way, and you'll have more success because you'll make an impact. No impact, no interest, guys. So communication is going to play a role in all of this. That's one of the big tools to be using.
Yeah, and I think like Jared also, made a good point around, those kind of feelings is actually like they can really be used as an opportunity too. Like what you have right now is the ability to relate to people in a way that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. Like everybody is prepared to have a conversation with you at this point, and in a way where you may have found it a little bit intimidating before to be like, what am I going to talk to this person about? Well, guess what? You got a giant, amazing story. Like, and all you have to do is tell them your experience. And the soon as you do that, like everything calms down. You're like, oh yeah, they're just a person just like me. And then you can actually begin to have what feels like a very natural conversation rather than maybe what you have in your brain as a networking call, which is, I need to talk about business and this and that. And it's like, well, guess what? Like, actually, we're all just people and we're all experiencing exactly the same thing right now, and I think it can really calm that down. And actually, Jared, the other thing I was going to just echo on yours as well is like, I agree, like in terms of the content and stuff. I mean, I personally am going crazy right now in terms of watching content, probably far too much. I mean, there was a point a couple of weeks ago where I had multiple screens on webinars so that I could watch so much, but there really is so much awesome content out right now. And whatever you want to explore going forward, there is a ton of free stuff out there, and even if it's stuff that like you didn't even, again, back to that idea of like not necessarily thinking that was within your lane, like don't worry too much, like open those lanes up, right? Just like what could be interesting, like you will sit on panels and watch people who you would never have had the opportunity to hear their thoughts and to, because they themselves, probably a little bit like this panel is like, when you've got the opportunity to give an hour or two of your time, it's so much more accessible than it is when maybe the option was a half a day to go to a conference or something. So, be aware of that from the industry perspective, the content that is being put out there and the fact that it's free is pretty much unprecedented. And it kind of goes the same. I mean, you guys have got a ton of academic content, but it does go the same for the academic side too. There is, so much, the General Assembly is doing a ton of free content right now. Like every Friday, all their courses are free. And, there's some incredible like academies that have opened up the majority of their learning platforms for April and May. We can, what I'll make sure I do is any tools that get mentioned here today, I'll put them on the email afterwards so you guys can check them out. But there really is like so much free content right now. I've never seen anything like it. So use it, Yeah.
And Siobhan, to that point, I published an article late last week, early this week on LinkedIn, very specifically talking about creating your own opportunity and creating, an internship. And the reality is, I think most of us have seen the graduation video and the speech that talks about Marines make their bed when they wake up in the morning because that's establishing their first accomplishment, right? And that's why the military is so militant about making your bed. Well, it's the same thing. If you're a student, you can create your own internship. You can very easily use all of that content to shape what your day looks like and have a very fulfilling educational day. It doesn't have to be sitting on site at NBC Universal. It can be in your living room, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, I would encourage it. And if I saw somebody that was enterprising enough to do that and put it onto their CV, I'd be fairly impressed. So, there's just a lot of great concepts. I just want to echo something Josie said also. Human beings are wired to adapt, 100%. People don't think about it, but human beings are a species of animal, right? We're wired to adapt, and we do that through fight or flight. Mm-hmm. Well, if you escape your situation that you're in, you're going to fail. That's a negative mentality, and you're not going to be successful. People are going to pass you by right now. If you use that fight mentality and you bring it to the point where you're just hungry enough and you have just enough adrenaline to fuel you, you can be incredibly successful. You can let that go too far and cripple you, but if you utilize that energy enough, it just amazing things can happen. And I think if our audience is young, enterprising college students, most of them are on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and they see tons of people who are putting out TikTok content, who are putting out Instagram content about how they are being enterprising. And they can follow some of that and they can be successful from it as well, because those are the people that are taking that level of fight and they're putting it just far enough to say, you know what, I'm going to make something, I'm going to create something. It's an extremely powerful tool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's a good kind of segue to just start talking a little bit around some of the kind of unique opportunity that exists right now. Could you guys share some thoughts that you have around kind of any of the changes that you think either you've already started to think about as yourselves and in your own roles, as well as just, I guess companies at large, and your experiences. But what, really people are going to start looking for post-COVID, I guess, in terms of qualities and attributes that maybe weren't considered before, and where students who, for want of a better word, are going to be the kind of COVID-19 students, so maybe this year and next, I don't know, but like where they can really capitalize on the fact that they are actually about to sit in an incredibly unique position that is a kind of, only they will have, and that they'll be able to use going forward, because only they sat in this period of 12 months or whatever it's going to be. Josie, did you want to start?
Yeah. So I think, these COVID students, for example, they're going to come out of this being a lot more resilient. They're going to be more tolerable. They're going to have a lot of more understanding. This pandemic is going to teach students within this time frame a lot, and even outside of that time frame. Even if you're working full time, or you lost your job, or you're being furloughed, your attitude is going to shift, and it is going to change. I think the biggest change that we'll see as far as the internship program will be that it will be attitude adjustments. It will be a different sense and level of maturity and independence. And so I only see positive attributes coming out of this from these students. I don't see too much negative, as long as they are being mindful of the fact that, others may be going through a lot worse. That is only, again, to their advantage. And so I think it's really going to mold a different kind of student, attitude wise, and definitely soft skill wise.
Yeah. Okay. Jimmy, did you want to add something?
Sure. The soft skill key point. There's your hard skills, your tech, what you do, your tasks, your functionality at work, but the soft skills, there's transferable skills. That's where you really got to play with this current marketplace. So when I was talking earlier about not getting the A-list job, if you get the B, C, D job, you're going to need to engage what transferable skills you have: communication, time management, interpersonal skills, tech skills. If you know Excel, guys, you can get a job. You can do data entry. That's not a bad thing. Companies are going to have a lot of damage control when they start to reopen. They're not going to have a lot of payroll money because they have been hit hard. They haven't made a lot of revenue for months. You can invent, as Jared said, you can create or invent an internship, volunteer to do something. So it's that kind of engagement, playing with the skills you have, your hard skills, transferable soft skills. That's all going to be part of that toolbox. But the virtual environment is not going away. That will be with us forever, I think, in the hiring community. So learn how to use that tool as well. Because Josie said, there are opportunities here. From bad comes good. Some students will get it and they will rise above. There are always people who fold under the pressure, fight or flight. There are people who just don't have that self-awareness, self-confidence, whatever it may be. It's hard sometimes for people to pull themselves out and put themselves where they're not comfortable. But this is all what you're going to have to start to think about. So that's where I think the difference of the class of COVID-19. And relating it to the class of 2008 with the crash, it was a terrible 2 years for students. but the economy changed, and all those young business people, all those young creatives, they're all flourishing.
Yeah.
So it's no different than a forest fire, guys. You know, the big trees burn, but it makes room for the little trees, and that's what creates the new forest. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
adapt. That's the key. Adapt, agility, all of that.
Jared?
Yeah, I mean, look, let's be realistic. I think, you know, if we can look at the restaurant industry, very often the bartender, when you take their hourly wage and their tips, they make more than the restaurant manager. So nobody should forget about that. You don't always need to be the restaurant manager. It's perfectly okay to be the bartender. Look, you know, I agree with the panelists. I view it from a slightly different perspective. I don't think there's going to be anything new that employers look for. I think there's going to be a stronger emphasis on those soft skills. I think flexibility and the ability to self-direct because of the remote scenarios that we're going to find ourselves in moving forward. I think that's something that employers that are not focused on it are going to focus. And I think you're going to see a little bit more empathy. I hope, I really hope, you know, that cutthroat world of business. Look, the reality is, like Jimmy said, there's not a lot of payroll dollars now because revenue is down, and companies are going to be hungry to grab their market share as we come out of this. Don't get me wrong. I get it. I'm neck deep in it. But at the end of the day, I think there is going to be a little bit more empathy from hiring managers and from leaders to say, okay, wait a second. I understand that you have a little bit of a different arrangement, but because your skill set is good, we can work around it. As opposed to the way it used to be, when it used to be, nope, I need somebody that's going to be in this office. They're going to be sitting at their desk at 8:58, ready to start at 9 a.m. I think we're going to see that ease up a little bit, which is very refreshing from my perspective.
I agree.
I agree.
Well, I was just going to do a little bit of a time check. So it's 5:45, and we do have lots of lovely, very positive comments coming through from everybody, which is lovely. So thank you very much for that. There's a couple of quite nice things here from actually what I'm guessing are slightly more of the professionals, actually. So from the kind of industry side, which might be nice just to reference here, which is, you know, Charlene saying that as an HR manager, she always sends a follow-up note after an interview, you know, and that these notes, you know, anybody that is sending a follow-up note, you know, really does go to the top of the, you know, the top of the pile, is immediately given, you know, star points, whatever. So, you know, just those, I'm sure those things are already in your toolkit, but like really that follow-up at the moment, you know, and again, like we said back to earlier, if the follow-up isn't immediately recognized, you know, don't necessarily give in with that. Use that as another hook, as an opportunity to go and next. And there's also a kind of quite cute quote here from Richard, saying that he said he has an old boss that had a quote on his desk which says, if you don't ask, you can't get. So, you know, it's a case of, you know, the one thing that stops most of us really is ourselves. You know, be respectful, but be direct. And communicate. I mean, we're all, as far as I can see, looking to go into a media or advertising / communication content world. So it's hopefully something that's kind of you're fairly comfortable with, but if not, great to be practicing. So there are a couple of questions, but I think it will kind of lead us into that. So I wanted to kind of talk a little, I had a couple of things that I wanted to ask like people specifically. So, and I think actually we started to move on to that kind of soft skills and that kind of area of like self-investment and that kind of thing. So Josie specifically, like when you're speaking to students, because I guess I wanted to think a little bit around the very specifically the kind of internship and very, very early job hunting, maybe even like not quite looking for, you know, still at college and not necessarily looking for that full move to the industry yet. Like what are the main areas of, and maybe less about pure skill, but like the areas of conversation and topics that you are really interested in, like exploring with that individual when you're, I mean, I don't know how much like one-on-one you do, but like, can you just talk to that a little bit? And I guess just to give you a little bit of ideas, like back to those soft skill things, right? Like is like how, I think it would be really lovely to talk a little bit to like that kind of, that integration between personal and professional, you know, like I think that my guess would be that that's a challenge that wherever you are as a student is something that's in your on your mind, really? Like, how do you begin to make that transition? And what does that look like from the kind of person sitting on the other side of the table who's looking for certain areas of, you know, who you are and you know, who you're going to turn into, and what kind of conversations strike, you know, kind of trigger that for you?
So the first thing that I look for in a conversation, you know, with these students and applicants is what it is that they are capable of communicating in terms of extracurricular things. You know, I already have their resume, so I know where you go to school, I know where you live, I know, you know, I know a lot of things. And so what I look for is that extra step. You know, what did you do when you were vice president of the, you know, marketing association there? Or what did you do when you had that volunteering opportunity with this nonprofit company? And so I try to focus on some things that cannot be put on the resume. And I try to make that conversation, you know, as long or as short as possible. You know, if the person isn't too overly confident, then, you know, I will do my best to make sure that I'm asking the most open-ended questions. And, you know, if the person does have a lot to say, and that's great too. But, you know, I just try to look for things that can make them stand out, because everyone stands out in their own way, but something new that they can give me that I can't find on LinkedIn or on their resume. So, cool. Yeah. But I definitely don't take time away from conversations. I can be on the phone for a very long time. It doesn't matter if you apply to an internship program or if you apply to a vice president program. I spend the same amount of time and personalization and care for each, and they can definitely feel that, especially as students.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess, like, staying on that kind of like self-investment theme, I'm sure many students have come across this idea, and I think Jimmy mentioned it earlier actually, of thinking of themselves as a product or a brand. When you're speaking to kind of, you know, and when they're speaking to potential hirers. But at the moment, like, as we've kind of touched on, and as you probably heard, you know, just like you, many brands, earning money isn't the top of their agenda right now. I mean, it may still be at the top of their agenda, but it's not necessarily what they're going to achieve. So what else would you recommend students focus on in terms of growth, to actually grow what is essentially their brand during this time? Jared?
You know, I think this actually crosses over from not only students, but also to the professionals that may be in transition now because of the scenario we're in. What do you do to grow your brand? I think, you know, showing that ability or willingness to mop the floor is something that really speaks volumes to somebody's brand. There's an authenticity to it that, it's not just about, hey, this person's hardworking or they're desperate. There's an authenticity to somebody who's willing to do that. You know, I don't view job candidates as a product per se. I view them as a brand, right? If you're a product, you're a commodity. That's, you know, that goes back to somebody's a resource and they're just a number. But if they're a brand, there's something about them that makes you want to buy them, right? There's something that makes you want to buy them and keep them and have some brand loyalty to them, if we're talking in marketing terms. And, you know, I think it's 100%, to me at least, attitudinal. You know, again, I don't get involved in staffing our internship or in the direct hire of every level of person in my company. We have an absolutely amazing team here in the United States and around the world. But one thing that holds true with every person that works on our talent acquisition team, especially because we're in the creative space, is they're looking for people that kind of go above and beyond to do something that sets themselves apart. Our internship program, the applications are video applications. They're not, you know, sending in your resume, CV, and then instantly coming in. So before we even invite anybody in to talk to us, we've viewed a 30-second, 1 minute, 2 minute video that they've created. The reality is, for somebody that's listening to this panel right now, if somebody came through in a Tyvek suit and a mask and turned this situation into something that could be looked at as fun, because it's not a fun situation But if somebody could look at it from, you know, a little bit of a quirky way and give us something, I think that would probably at least spark a phone conversation. I mean, that's what you're looking
It can
for.
be very dangerous both ways, I feel.
Genuine.
I mean,
glad you said that, Jared, not me.
yeah, but I mean, you know, we don't want somebody wasting an N95 mask, but you know, you can get one of your homemade ones. And
Right.
you know, but it's the mentality of, you know, if we go way back when, you know, years upon years ago, there was a video submission at one of the companies I worked for, and it was for somebody who they were gunning for a job. It was done almost like a reality TV show, and that person made this video, and the centerpiece to the video was actually their dog. It wasn't even about them. It was about their relationship with their dog. Right. And in a creative environment, you know, it kind of sucked you in to watch it, and you were like, wow, like this dude's wearing a tie and the dog's wearing a matching tie. Like, come on. So from a creative perspective, you know, that's the kind of things that I think, you know, our team looks for. At the end of the day, you have to have those technical skills. You have to have the soft skills. You have to be a go-getter. You have to have that grit, so on and so forth. But
yeah. No, I think it's a benefit, right? we are in a creative industry. Like, obviously what you've just said could be super dangerous if you're going into banking or something. But we're in the creative world, you know, like, and when in 6 months, 9 months, 18 months time, some of the creative campaigns that will come out of this will be way more outrageous than what you've just designed. And right. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing some of them. So go for it, do it to the right audience in the right way. Yeah.
But it also translates, right? It translates because if that person is going into banking and they have the Excel skills, well, be a little bit bold and say, you know what, I'm willing to take a job doing data entry. Yeah. Just like Jimmy said.
It can easily get you a job. I mean, I deal with it every day at the university. Yeah. If I can, I just want to share a quick anecdote. Because as I said in my introduction, I was a photographer. It's what I wanted to do since I was a kid, majored in photography and art in college. We had what we called outreach, which is the equivalent to interning. I interned for a very, very well-known photographer. He's passed away, well-known guy. My first day in the studio, the first assistant gave me a tour. Studio A, B was a duplex on 57th Street. Studio A, B, C, dressing room, makeup room, dark room, processing room, production room. I mean, it was a magnificent facility. And then this is your office, Jimmy. And he took me to a door. And I thought, wow, an office. He opened it, it was the broom closet. So I got the message. I was not going to be on camera with models and all that. I was going to be cleaning and doing maintenance. But I will tell you, attitudinal to Jared's point, that's me. I'm a worker bee. That studio was never cleaner or more organized. And in 2 weeks, I exhibited a work ethic that they accelerated my path. And I was on camera quickly. I was on set with all of these people. The purpose of the attitude, keeping it in the right place, going that extra mile, as Josie said, for all of you interns out there, and again, for all of you interrupted job people, attitude. If you really just let them know what your message is, what your brand narrative is, if there's an impact, that's the takeaway. Yeah. The resume, as Josie said, that's step one. They like you, they're going to call you. Now they want to get inside your head. What's your substance? What's your core? And that's the messaging you've got to now do through communication.
Yeah, and I think like this idea of like making out like, you know, roles are hierarchical at that point. Like these are, for me anyway, I'm not sure that even is the case, right? Like, I mean, you know, the more you can learn, the more micro you can be involved. However you choose to think about that, whether you choose to like, I'm starting at the bottom or I'm the this or I'm the whatever, like that's power. It's all the knowledge is power. Like it's incredible. And when you move up your career, whether you stay in that, I mean, first of all, if you're somebody that knows exactly what you want to do, well, very lucky. That's awesome. And if you believe that like, you know, maybe the janitor closet had the answer to that if you hadn't have been shown to the janitor closet, you wouldn't have found that answer. So, you know, but you have to be open to things where we started with about being open to those things anyway. But yeah, I mean, when you have that knowledge, you would be astounded how quickly those opportunities come, because if you don't if you can't show that, you know, that's a 2-second thing where, like for you, Jimmy, you're sitting on set and all of a sudden some photographer who's going crazy because he hasn't got his whatever, and you know exactly where it is, and without even having to say I'm going to get it, you go get it and you're just there and you're next to him. That's how you ended up on camera, which you wouldn't have known because you wouldn't have been shown the janitor closet otherwise, because that wasn't in the internship program, you know, like, so paying attention to all of that, it's very powerful. And that is something that no matter where you are in your career will continue to happen, you know, like, personally, you know, I had, you know, I also, you know, I went into a business with absolutely no idea what I was going to do, ended up being a, you know, a secretary, a PA, a receptionist, ordering sandwiches. There was very little about that business, you know, that I didn't know within 6 months. And, you know, continued for that. And no matter how long my career progressed afterwards, you know, the fact that I always knew what was going on in the real nitty gritty, like I may not be able to actually do some of the jobs that I was managing the people, but I definitely knew how to call bullshit on it. Like, well, and that again is like, they're super powerful things.
So Siobhan, to that point, just real quick for 10 seconds, if I can point out to everybody that's listening to this panel, our New York global headquarters, our last 3 assistant producers started off as our receptionist, hired in as receptionist, promoted within 6 to 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I personally happen to think it's the best route ever. But and that's where everybody knows. I mean, yeah. Anyway, so there's quite a cute, a nice question actually that I would just like to kind of refer to you guys. So I actually can't see who this is from. It's anonymous, but it says it sounds like you guys are talking about adapting to America 2.0. How do you see this new structure and way of doing business? And the new opportunities, and I think possibly what it's referring to is actually new job opportunities, maybe because of what we've gone through. So, and this, I guess, could be even, you know, outside of your lines of work, but you know, I'm sure, like personally, I've certainly seen a lot of conversation around like culture and empathy and people and teams, and you know, I know Jared, this is certainly an area that you work with, but like. Do you even see like completely new opportunities, like actual roles and things like that because of what we've experienced?
I do in interesting spaces. You know, it may not be the sexiest of spaces, but I do see that there's going to be additional roles. I think you're going to see that certain roles will be taken over by technology, but they're going to be offset by new roles that are coming in. I think you're going to see a lot more blue collar, hands-on, whether it be you know, janitorial sales reps, things of that nature. I think you're going to see a lot of new sanitization technology evolve. You know, people are going to create and market machines and whatnot. So I think there's opportunity there. Interestingly enough, I do believe that there's going to be more opportunity in the corporate setting to have, again, that relaxed work environment. So I think you may see more part-time work from home people. Where you have a job share scenario come out of this. Again, I'm just thinking out loud. But you know, at least in my industry, I don't see many new jobs coming out of it. What I will say for somebody who's enterprising out there and can figure this out, the world has created business continuity plans for hurricanes. They've created business continuity plans for tornadoes, many other things. Nobody, I'm sure, with the exception of the large financial firms and large consultancies, nobody has business continuity plans in place for pandemics. And I think there's opportunity for people to get involved in that industry to become a consultant or go to work for, you know, some of the larger consultancies in their policy and legal divisions to begin doing that. And that's something interesting. Not many people are having that dialogue. But you know, if somebody's willing to take that risk and start doing that, we have data to create those plans now.
Yeah, and I mean, what better person to do that, right, than somebody who would literally be a student of the COVID-19 period.
That's right.
Sorry,
I want to add something to what Jared was saying to build off that. The opportunities that come out of From Bad Comes Good, the service industries will do well going forward. You're going to find that higher education will change. This is a life-changing event. Certain things will just change forever. There's no way around it. Higher education is going to be one of them. There'll be more of a hybrid learning experience. There'll be more offline. International students, the big source of revenue for schools, especially Stony Brook. that will shift. They're not all going to come here. They'll do online. So the revenue exchange will change there. The universities will have to adapt to that. So service industries is some of you guys should pay attention to. But coming out of Stony Brook, Jared, you said something very interesting about the sanitization. Stony Brook is known for STEM, the science, tech, engineering, and math. But we have a lot of geeks, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but we have a lot of geeks at our university, very smart, young, entrepreneurial kids. We have a small business development entrepreneurial department on campus. And some of the conversations have been where to invest time in this new, not yet created industry. But I think you hit something very much, a good point, because you're going to see more and more of that. So if you are an entrepreneurial spirited graduate, start to think about where the opportunities will be. You can get capital. There's a lot of wealthy people, a lot of venture capitalists out there that are willing to put money up. So if you put together an idea and a good plan, and Jared said he can help you with that. He didn't say he'd help you, but he's got one.
You've got nothing else.
So go see what his template is and present it. This is where you invent and create. This is what it's all about. So take this horrible moment, embrace it. It's the whole thing about change. We are resilient. So where's your sense of resiliency?
So fun, right? And Josie, something else just got put in the chat that I just would like to get your thoughts on. So, Peter was saying that actually maybe there's even some more opportunity in the internship world for non-paid internships or even just part-time internships, and with companies that might not have even kind of considered it today just because they are now struggling. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. There's going to be a lot of smaller companies and, even just large companies that are booming, such as streaming platforms, gaming. There's all these industries just going through the roof with success, and they're going to need help too. But as far as the smaller businesses and nonprofits that maybe have never considered interns before, I do see a few that are open to that, just because of a sign of the times. They may not have that funding, and although that is unfortunate for the company, that's fortunate for the person that gets that opportunity. They're going to have that experience, and they're going to have a new network, and they can use that network to leverage and finding that new job in the future. And so I definitely hope that students aren't discouraged when they see that it's a company that they may have never heard of, or they may not be that interested in. I mean, there's always something to everything. Keep your eyes open, and know that you just never know who you will meet in your journey, and you never know who will come back in the end. And so every internship anywhere is an opportunity to learn and make new relationships that are going to help you later.
And Josie, I don't know if you know Patrick, but somebody called Patrick just put in the Q&A that he's saying NBC just moved a tremendous amount of resource, obviously, to remote. Surely there actually would be an opportunity in supporting all the people that are going to continue to remote work, which actually is a really good point and goes back to Jimmy's idea of being a digital native. Maybe there's a whole new tech help desk role.
Of course, in IT.
Yeah, but remote working, and actually you've all got all the skills for that immediately. Basically, if you know how to make Zoom work, you're good. There's something straight away that you could just start, because every single company right now is got their remote workers. They're still needing to troubleshoot them. They're still probably got millions of tech calls that they can't keep up with. I mean, I interestingly did contact Zoom a couple of days ago, and it took them over 48 hours to get back to me. So I think that's actually a really cute idea. I love that. So I'm really conscious that we've gone a little bit over, which I figured would happen. Anybody that knows me knows I can talk forever, and I think this panel is pretty much the same. But I just wanted to end with probably a bit more of a quick fire kind of idea, I guess. So I know that certainly, like, and this is, you know, a little bit more of a personal kind of thing, really. So I know that for me, over the last kind of 6, 7, 8 weeks or whatever, there have definitely been moments where I've been like really overwhelmed with my kind of feelings, whether that's feelings, you know, whatever they may be. And obviously they're different for everybody. You know, isolation, any kind of anxiety, just numbness, just, you know, pure joy, like, who knows, right? But like, just to each of you, I guess, like, what do you do to, when you have those moments, just as Jimmy and as Jared and as Josie, to kind of take a deep breath and come back to yourself and everything that you know, and be able to just take one little step forward from there, like in that moment when it's all just like, Jared, did you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a very simple answer, and it's a two-part. Number one, every day I exercise. I try to wake up in the morning. Now that I don't have a commute, I've gained hours in my morning. So, you know, I'm not waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to exercise before my day starts. I'm waking up a little bit later so I can get a little more sleep. So I always make sure to get some kind of exercise in because, as I call it, it burns off the crazy, and that's really important. But beyond that, if I'm in the middle of the day, which, by the way, happens almost every day, in the middle of the day, overly stressed, feeling the need to get away, I don't feel guilty. I get up and I walk away from my multitude of screens that you don't see on camera. We had a big rainstorm here where I live today. I got up from my desk and I walked over to the front door, and I opened up the front door and I stood over the overhang and I just listened to the rain for 5 minutes, smelled the smell of the rain, and then came back in and worked. Nobody should ever feel guilty for doing that. Nobody should ever. And if you work for somebody who makes you feel guilty for doing that, you're working for the wrong person.
Yeah.
100%. Jimmy?
So it's a good question. I think for me, I'm a good processor. It's my DNA anyway, but as a business owner for all those years I was in business, you have to be the rainmaker. It's all on you. And I have learned that failing is okay. My favorite acronym, guys, and I wish I invented it, I did not, but FAIL, F-A-I-L, first attempt in learning. It's an awesome acronym. Fall, fail, enjoy it, embrace it, learn from it. So me, I'll take that step back. I'll reassess. I will go outside. I'll smell that rain. I'm the same way. You must disconnect. You know, when I work with senior mid-level executives looking for jobs, looking to make a career pivot, and they'll tell me how they invest 8 hours a day looking for a job, I think they're crazy. I think you drive yourself crazy. You must balance it out and have me time. Yeah. So I find me time during the day. I'm a gym rat. I'm fortunate I have a gym in my house, so my gym wasn't closed. Like Jared, I exercise every day. That provides my balance. That's my me time. But yeah, during the day, I got to shut it down for 2 minutes, whatever it is, just to separate. Yeah. So that's my way of dealing with that detox moment.
Thank you. Josie, did you want to just finish?
Yeah, I think I definitely pivot to what both of you guys are saying, and a little bit about what Jared wrote on LinkedIn the other day, having a schedule. For me, the best thing that gets me through my day is knowing that I have something, you know, to do around this time frame and something to do around this one, and just giving me the opportunity to choose amongst different tasks and duties. And if I don't get them done in one day, then that's fine. You know, your expectations shouldn't be that high for yourself. Everyone is handling this very differently, and some are handling it a lot worse than others. And so I don't think that you should be too hard on yourself when you're choosing what to do with your free time. But personally, I do like to go outside. So living in the middle of downtown Miami, that's not the most favorable thing for me to do since there's people everywhere. But, you know, I try to make the best of it, open my window and try to FaceTime some people that I know, and just get through a list of those things that I've been trying to do forever, just small hobbies. So if you've been waiting to do that thing, do the thing now. Now is the time.
Yeah. No, I think, and it's, I mean, I myself as well, I'm much more extroverted, you know, I get energy from others, and you know, it's like you guys, I'm super physical and all that. But I think that, and what I'm hearing from everybody as well, is like variety, right? Like, you know, actually we get energy from multiple different things and sources, and whether you are an introvert or an extrovert, that reigns true. And so just making sure that you are still getting a variety of energy, I think is actually really important. And you know, I keep hearing actually and listening to lots of people talk again around, you know, kind of how different teams are dealing with and stuff. I think that there was a real trend a few weeks ago around people just being like, here's how to create, you know, more and more community and more Zooming and more this and more that. It's like, well, that's great if you are an extrovert and if that's how you, but actually, if that's not what you want to do, if being on camera is literally the worst, you know, worst idea ever, or then that's okay too, right? And like, these are great things to think about now at an early stage in your career, to know, you know, what, because they're also great things to talk about with an employer and to be thinking about when you are, you know, to Jared's point, making sure you're going to work for the right one for you, you know, because there are going to be attributes that are company based too, that are going to require that kind of exchange, and having the awareness of that and being able to like articulate that and not be afraid to, you know, to be honest about that. I actually think is a great skill. And I know that like if I was talking to young people and they have that type of awareness and that understanding of themselves, it's hugely helpful for me to begin to kind of coach them and mentor them, and guide them. And so like creating that kind of investment in yourself now and having that two-way dialogue, even just with yourself, while you can't be doing anything else, I think is an amazing opportunity. And again, something that's going to come out, not just for students in this environment, but for all of us, right? So awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been really, really fun. We could probably go on for another 3 hours, but we won't. And guys, thank you ever so much. You know, I see that almost everybody's kind of still online. So you've obviously, hopefully that means you've really enjoyed the content. Sorry, I went a little bit over, but hopefully that was really useful. As I said at the beginning, we will make sure the recording of this is posted in the next few days, as well as sent out to everybody that was registered. If anybody didn't register, but you know, please do forward it on to friends. We'll let you know where it's going to be. And you know, as I also said, we're going to be doing these kind of webinars a lot more often. And one of the tracks will very much be specifically dedicated to students, hopefully moving on from just COVID conversations, but in time, you know, and you know, I'm really, really looking forward to being able to do that. So thanks again, guys. Thank you, Josie, Jared, Jimmy. Have a lovely rest of your evenings. Have lovely weekends. And thanks everybody again for joining. We'll talk to you all very soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night, everybody. This was fun.
Thank you. Bye.